it's an absolute miracle. It's like this country needs to be nurtured. Our rights need to be cared for. We need to be paying attention. Oh yeah, we're not backing down. We're not backing down. That's not the way to do it. That's not how we win a cultural war. We're in it to fight. And you know what? If we're adapting the standards that the left is putting forward for us, we've already lost.
It's amazing to talk to somebody like you that's seeing the issue so clearly at 16. I'm proud of you, Tim. What's up, guys? JSlay here, and really excited to introduce you all to my next guest. This kid's got an incredible story. Think about this for a minute. So you're a young conservative, 16 years old, and you're growing up in the suburbs of San Francisco. But not only that, you have a working knowledge of socialism because you were born in Russia, and your parents and grandparents were business people and political people in Russia, and that's why they fled over here. And you find yourself, of all places, around San Francisco, where it's about as socialist as it can get. So rather than let that keep him down, he's flipped it on its head. He stayed positive. He's the president of the Young Republicans of Dublin. He's worked on the Mike Garcetti campaign. And last but not least, he is in leadership with two incredible groups. One is called Today is America. They have amassed a following between TikTok and Instagram. Listen to this, 40 million followers, 40 million. TikTok and Instagram. So check them out. Here's a short clip of the kind of content they pump out almost on a daily basis on Today is America. I know you're going to enjoy this interview with Tim Korshunov.
You've been lied to about the DC riots. You've probably heard, imagine if the protesters were black. This is how Black Lives Matter protesters were met months ago, with police officers on their knees. Not to mention tear gas, tasers, and lethal force were used at the Capitol. You were told Trump didn't condemn the violence. Yet here he is, multiple times, condemning the violence. Contrast that with how Democrats reacted when the city of DC was literally burning down. Kamala Harris's reaction was to help post bail. Your outrage is manufactured.
All right, so we're back with Tim Korshunov. Am I saying that right?
You're saying that absolutely right. It's, people
Korshunov.
don't usually get it correctly, but you do, and I appreciate that.
Hey, man, it's about as phonetic as it gets. Korshunov. So
Korshunov, there you
go. If you can't get that, you got something wrong with your eyes. But I want the listeners to understand why you're doing what you're doing and kind of the growth that you've had.
Right. Well, I guess I'll preface this with sort of my personal beginnings in the conservative movement. I'll start with my family's heritage. I was born in Moscow myself. I moved here when I was very young. I'm a first generation American. And what I saw around there and what my family saw around there, the conditions after communism, the conditions which were, I guess, resulted from the economic stance that Russia came out of after the transition from the Soviet Union, it was not great. I'll just start by saying this. I don't want this to come to the United States of America, and that's why I fought so hard in this land and used my voice as a young person, even though that may not be as influential as again, the 40 to 60-year-old man with the American dream. But it's important to me. It's important to my family. I want my children to grow up in a nice country where they'll have the ability to, take personal responsibility and be able to fight for the American dream. And that's very important to me.
I'm glad you're with us, my man. I want to, not everybody knows history. That was one of the things that very much impressed me about you was you're 16, right? 17?
I am 16, yes.
16 years old. So,
right.
I think our conversation started around the difference in the generations, Generation Z and the millennials and all that, which, you knew more about that than me. And then you brought up cultural Marxism and those things. So I was like, wow, this is a young guy that knows his stuff. So you were born in Moscow. I don't remember you telling me that. What years did you actually live over there in Russia?
So, it's hard for me to estimate, but I think around 2011 or 2010, I moved here. It was around me being 6 or 7 years old, something like that, I would say.
Okay. So, but your family had always been over there.
Yes, my family's still over there. I still have my grandparents over there. I have my, obviously immediate family. My parents are here in the United States with me. But yeah, everybody else is over there. I have some family living in Germany. I have some family in Ukraine as well, actually, but more or less Russia, that area.
Wow.
Europe,
so between Russia, Germany, and the Ukraine, those are some hot button 20th century spots right there.
Exactly. All those come with history that actually prefaces my conservative belief, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, and history that changes the world, and that's the unfortunate thing is I feel that most people your age, most kids your age, they're not being told that story. At least they're not being told the worst parts of it, maybe. And I do feel that there's a push toward socialist thinking. But before we go there, what year was it? If you can, approximations are fine, but when the USSR became the Russia that we know of today, where it kind of left the Stalin-esque version of what it is, and the Soviet-style Russia?
Well, that was during the perestroika. I would say that would be still be in the Soviet Union, the perestroika, when Russia started transition from the Stalin era into, I guess, a more modern Soviet Union. But I would say the 1990s is probably a good way to put when the Soviet Union became the modern Russia. The Putin era came in. I think he started as prime minister actually, and Russia became more modern and similar to what we know it as to be today. So I would say 1990s, around that time.
Okay. And when your grandparents, when they talk about the way Russia used to be, what's their sentiment about that?
How Russia used to be in terms of the Soviet Union?
Yes.
I mean, it was terrible. It was terrible. It was incredibly invasive, and there was no privacy. My grandfather, he was actually a small-time Russian politician in the city of Tver. It's a provincial city about 150 kilometers away from Moscow, and he was incredibly pro-capitalist and anti-communist and he was very liberal, classical liberal, I would say, for his time. And Russia didn't take that. He had a lot of run-ins with the KGB. He had people storm his house and things like that. So, sort of these stories revolving around in my family. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying this. Right. They sort of really, I saw a lot of overlaps with what's happening what happened then and the cancel culture that we have here, which really, really, really pushed me to fight for many different things with today's America and many other avenues of expression I have as of now.
And to be clear, because not everybody's going to be as nuanced as you, when you talk about
right.
classical liberal, traditional liberal,
right,
that's different than we say, oh, they're liberals, in America, because we think.
Oh yeah, no.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but a traditional liberal, and I learned this from Dave Rubin. I don't know if you know who Dave Rubin is. He said, hey, I'm a classical liberal, but yet he's landing on the conservative side of things. But classical liberalism used to be more of a Jeffersonian kind of mentality toward, I guess, America, about free speech
right.
being incredibly important.
Yes.
The individual rights of man being incredibly
right.
important.
Right.
That used to be more what true liberalism was, if I'm right.
Okay. Yes. I mean, classical liberalism is that like freedom of expression, and the need to protect that at all costs possible. That was pretty much it. It's like with a classical liberal, I may, like, in terms of the political sphere in the United States, we may disagree on taxes, but we believe in free speech and the ability of everybody to say whatever they want without it, sort of offending somebody else and being banned on that basis. So yeah, I would say that's an accurate description of a classical liberal. Yes.
Okay, very good. Well, speak a minute more. You said you see a strong overlap or carryover. Well, not carryover is the wrong word, but definitely I guess overlap between what was going on in Russia with, the canceling of free speech, and then the cancel culture over here today, which. One nuance to that is, your leftists over here, at least on Facebook, they'll say, "Oh, this isn't coming from the government. So this is not actually canceling. This is coming from the corporations. It's private companies can do what they want."
I'd say that's even scarier, actually. I'm sorry, Jeremy, to interrupt you, but I'd say that's even scarier in terms of the culture, because in Russia, I mean, free speech was not allowed to exist. That's how I would put it. In the United States, it's a cultural problem, and that's even worse. Right? Because the government can control only so many aspects, but when you have a whole mob on each social media sitting there and practically doing the canceling job of the government, which is right now, I mean, in the hands of the Democratic Party, I would argue it's worse.
Yeah. It's amazing to talk to somebody like you that's seeing the issue so clearly at 16. I'm proud of you, Tim. But your contemporaries, your peer group. Now, I'm not talking about the other peers that are right around you in your initiative, which is called Today is America. We'll get on that in a minute. But in general, the 16-year-old people across this nation, they're probably not seeing it as clearly as you. How would you describe their place in today's political thinking?
I'd say I have a very different experience actually than probably a lot of kids, not only because of my Russian heritage, but also because I grew up in an incredibly liberal area and one of the most in California, actually. So
Where is that?
That's in Dublin, California. It's in Alameda County. It's actually a district controlled by Eric Swalwell. So,
Yeah, it comes with its whole bag of issues, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly, precisely so. But a lot of people, they're not thinking about politics. They quite frankly don't care. They want to hang out with their friends every single Friday. They want to go out to the movies. They want to go out to sports bars. They want to, just I guess live their lives and not be involved. Unfortunately for the conservative movement, and I mean, I don't care about party affiliation, more just the fundamentals. But I'd say Republicans, the problem there is that everywhere you look in movies now, in sports commercials, in sports themselves on the field, it's like you see the bias there. So even the people who don't care, and I guess the general social group of people who just want to continue living their lives, who don't give two damns about politics, they're being influenced. And unfortunately, what I'm seeing right now is that that's a lot of the 16-year-olds. That's a lot of people who are not involved, but they're still being surface level indoctrinated because they don't care enough to go down to the brass tacks and understand the fundamentals, which is a crucial component of conservatism, and probably one of the main issues I see with it right now. Is it's hard to sell conservatism without actually, I guess, understanding the basis of government, economics, and many other things, because liberalism is so not liberalism, I would say Marxism, socialism, all these ideas are incredibly infectious, and conservatism doesn't have that aspect to it. It's the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off either, but it seems to me that with my age group and older, but I think I'm hearing it with what you're saying too. There's sort of a subconscious trade that people are making. It's like, okay, I'm comfortable as it is. I got my Netflix, I've got my sports, I've got, the exactly. bars, the chasing girls, whatever you're doing at 16. The 50-year-olds are saying that as well. It may not be the same things, but they're comfortable enough. And it's kind of like, I'm told if I remain silent, I can keep my comfort. If I just go with the flow and don't cause any ripples, I can keep that comfort. But if I do speak out, if I do stand up, man, I might get canceled. Things are going to be taken away. So there's this subconscious fear keeping people silent. Do you see that as well in your age group?
I would say I would put it a little differently. I think it's a misconception. I think people are born, especially in California and a lot of these liberal areas, into very good economic conditions, and they view them as a given right. But what they don't understand is that the United States, I mean, it's an absolute miracle. It's like this country needs to be nurtured. Our rights need to be cared for. We need to be paying attention. But a lot of the young people right now, they view we've had a stellar economy before COVID with Donald Trump. We've had jobs, we've had great wages, and they view all these things as a given right without actually, I guess, working to upkeep that. And when you view that as a given right and as a given in life, you start to build into different ideas such as equity and many other things. So I think that's the biggest misconception, is that the United States is always going to remain great economically. We're going to have this great system. People are going to be able to live the dream. But the fact is, that's not going to happen if we don't nurture the basic principles of freedom of speech and capitalism.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. And, when you said that you were from Dublin, California, and then you mentioned that it was a very well-to-do area, it sounds. Is that correct? Okay.
It is. Yes.
One thing that's surprising to me, and I was in San Francisco and went up the coast a couple of years ago to go see the Redwoods, so like a 7-hour road trip. And
right.
I saw a great divide, actually. From San Francisco all the way up, of very, very poor. I'm talking destitution, tents on the streets, needles in the joints in the sidewalk. I mean, it was legitimately that way. And then the very, very wealthy that didn't really have to be among that. So to me, it's like California itself, as good as it may be economically across the nation, I feel like socialism is showing its true colors over there, at least from a Tennessean's perspective, in terms of, okay, there's a greatly shrinking middle class.
You're totally right.
Okay, so did you just get lucky to be in a bubble of wealthy people, or explain that part to me, because I don't see how Californians don't drive down the roads of San Francisco or many towns over there on the coast, especially, and see this poverty happening.
No, we do. I was just referring, I guess, to the suburbs and my experience specifically here with people who, work in San Francisco, but came to start families, I guess, in a more quieter town in a much safer area. But yes, in San Francisco, I mean, there's needles on the street. I was there quite recently. I was, I think, on 24th or 16th Mission Street. I walk up from the BART station. I see people trading drugs. It's unsafe. I would call it short of anarchy. It's terrible what's going on there. And I think, the colors are starting to show. I mean, California is losing a congressional district. People are moving out. I think 200,000 people a year are moving out of California and moving to predominantly purple and red areas such as Texas, Florida. Florida's gaining a congressional district actually right now. And actually New York also lost one. So it's not just California.
Yeah.
It's any blue area and the transition to a purple or a far more red area.
Yeah, well, big business owners definitely,
yeah.
My father's neighborhood right down the road is a very nice neighborhood in Tennessee. They've had two corporate presidents from big companies. I'm not going to mention which ones.
Mm-hmm.
I will for the heck of it. The IC Corporation, for instance, that's owned. It was Southern California. And
mm-hmm.
he said, enough, I'm leaving. And he moved to Tennessee. My next door neighbors in my very middle class neighborhood right here,
mm-hmm.
We had two neighbors just move in, like point to their houses, Portland and Seattle. And they're both doctors.
Wow.
They were just like, we've had enough.
Mm-hmm.
So we are, in these red states like Tennessee, like Florida, Texas, you're definitely seeing an influx of people from those towns. And we're kind of thinking to ourselves, much like what I said a minute ago, when are the Californians gonna realize, like, hey, being blue is not good for us? These leftist policies that are sprinting further left, it's not actually turning out too well because people are leaving.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think people may be misinformed, but when their comfort starts to go away, I think the money is going to pour in the right direction. I think California. I see a great possibility of California turning red in the next 50 years. I think Mike Garcia put it best: our state is too beautiful to give up on. Congressman Garcia is somebody on whose campaign I actually worked for before, and I think he has a very, very good perception of how the Republican Party is going to take over California in the next 50 years. And I mean, with the recall Newsom petitions, like you look at that and you say, hey, you know what? There's a very, very strong voice in California against the authoritarian rule that's being perpetuated on us. And I'll say more. I was actually at a Turning Point USA event. Charlie Kirk was speaking at Calvary Church. It's in San Jose. That church has been locked up and not allowed to hold any religious services and not have any events. And the priest he's been going to court and he's been fined over $1 million, probably over $2 million at this point. And he's been saying, shame on you to the court. And he's been going there every single month. And the amount of enthusiasm in the 2,000 people that attended that event that I saw, I mean, it gave me so much enthusiasm for the idea that California is going to go red very soon and we're going to have a change in leadership. We probably have the most passionate and enthusiastic conservatives all over the country, even though it doesn't look like that. But I think people are getting more and more tired, and they're seeing even, I guess, the moderate Democrats get more and more tired, and this enthusiasm starting to rise. And if we play our cards right, it's like during in November when we're going to have the recall Newsom ballot, it's like maybe it'll work out. You never know, but the hope is there.
Yeah, and one of the things, I guess, two things that hit me as you're speaking. One is I do realize your age group, I'm looking at it through the lens of somebody that knows business owners, and I'm seeing people move their house and home, over here to Tennessee.
Right.
And I'm thinking, why don't they get it? But if you're 16 and you happen to be born in, one of the suburbs and you're lucky, you probably are ignoring what it looks like on San Francisco, in the San Francisco streets, and you just think, well, that's all big cities,
right.
And so
it's not. You go to Nashville. When you go to Nashville, it's like you don't see that. You don't have that in other states. It's quite frankly a California problem.
Yeah, and I just think that they have the ability to be insulated at 16 because they're still living at home. They're not opening their own business and having to understand how economics work as far as that goes. So that makes better sense.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, and again, I didn't expect it to go this way, but it's cool. The Newsom recall. So explain that to me. I've seen it in the news. I'm not even exactly sure what that means. It seemed like anything ever that big that could happen to the Democrats, like never actually happens. Like Hillary with the emails, she wasn't going to jail.
Right. Right. Exactly. But I mean, so I guess I'll explain the ballot. So, or I'll actually start with the recall petition that's been going on. So they raised, I think, 1.6 million signatures, which is needed to actually trigger a special election in which there'll be a ballot and there'll be two questions. So first, recall Newsom or no, yes or no question. And second of all, who to replace Newsom. I have Caitlyn Jenner coming out, so we'll see what happens with that to run for governor. But again, I really hope people do decide to recall Newsom and we get some pretty good new ideas and good competitors coming out in terms of that second question of who to replace him. I know Major Williams, who's running for governor. He's a former major in the military. I love his ideas. He's really great. If you guys are watching this, please go ahead and check him out, because I think he's doing a really great job. He has great ideas, and he would make California a much better place than Newsom would. But generally, it was triggered by the fact that Newsom locked everything down during the during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, while himself going out to restaurants with certain donors and special interest groups and whatnot, and lobbyists. And it's kind of funny because Newsom himself is in the age category for quote unquote risk decided by the CDC. So it just goes to show that on a personal itinerary level, there's not even a belief in the harmfulness of this virus. But that's how I would put it.
The double standard's rather amazing when they have to hold themselves to account. But looking at those photos of him at that dinner, it wasn't just him at a dinner with 12 people. They had like a big party there. I mean, I've seen some videos. It was a massive indoor space with, a crowd. It was like a college bar almost, kind of the scene.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, the guy was straight up, brazenly breaking his own rules.
Absolutely.
So Tim, one of the things that almost any age group, when they're talking to me, and I'm not some kind of big influencer right now, I hope to be, because I want to win people to truth. But your common person that's, working at the factory, or just, doesn't matter what they do, but they're conservative, and they just feel this encroaching, pressing in on them and their belief system due to cultural things, government. I mean, we basically got shellacked in the federal elections. And they say one big question, like, what can I really do? What can I do? And Tim, you're a guy that did something, and you've already kind of given us the reasons on why you did it. Now tell us about what you did with What is America, and kind of what led into that initiative.
Right. So the biggest fundamental I see in the United States of America is our culture. The biggest fundamental of our culture is free speech. I guess the founders, they couldn't foresee the incoming social media and all these platforms, and I guess now monopolizing actually this sort of aspect of the industry. But we have social media. We have the new digital grounds where most of Gen Z and young millennials are getting their information. Why I joined Today's America at a very early stage with the founders, Cam and Liam, who founded this great organization, is to, give conservatives the voice on those platforms to speak the truth. With this fact-checking stuff, and I guess just the overall general censoring of conservative media, people are getting one side of the story. And it's usually aligning with a certain political ideology, which benefits a certain party. I'm not going to say which party, but we know which party in the general election. So, it's not good what's going on. We don't have the truth out there, and Today's America was born to fight back and get our narrative out there, because at least let people see both sides of the story. That's what I always say, and let them come to their own conclusion.
Yeah, right. Your target age group is your peer group, right? Between 15 to 20 years old. I'd
say 13-25 would be accurate. Okay, so Gen Z and young millennials. Yeah,
that's good. And I mean, you guys and the two brothers, what's their names again that helped start it?
Cameron and Liam Rafizadov.
Yep, and I met them that night, right? Same night with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we had a great conversation between you, me, and Cam. Actually, he's one of the older brothers. I work very closely with him.
Yeah. So really sharp guys. I mean, you guys are definitely got the goods to bring it for the 23 to 25-year-olds too. So that's cool. Well, tell us about the growth of Today's America and your strategy.
Let me just start saying, I'll just start talking about the growth. I mean, we've been able to grow in 11 months with $0 of funding to a 40+ million people cumulative audience. Getting influencers on board is usually our main strategy to increase that reach. It's not hard for us. People love our mission. How I actually personally joined Today's America is I had a girl who attended my high school who was an ambassador for Today's America. She had a fairly large TikTok account. She had about 100,000 followers, I would say.
Well, and after really fast. Remember, my audience is like 45 to 55. So maybe some 30. You're all good. You said TikTok, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So she had a lot of followers. All right. Got it. Go.
Yeah. She had about 100,000 followers on there, and she posted a TikTok that was, I guess, controversial by the liberal ideas in California, which said, hey, you know what? Maybe America's not systemically racist when this was definitely happening during the height of the riots that we had during the summer. And my high school, my community, I mean, they turned against her. She got death threats. She got people coming over to her house. Some things I won't get into just for personal reasons, but I mean, she did not have a good experience with that. And I was one of the people that empathized with her, because I ran actually a local conservative group here of young Republicans. And I was like, so do you have anybody to go to? Do you have like a family of, I guess, a family of people who you can talk to about this? Do you have a network of people who, think the same way as you? Because, you're welcome to join us, but you seem to be doing, much bigger things with that big of a following on TikTok. And she let me know about Today's America. And right when I heard about the family aspect of this organization, allowing people to, have a network of connections, and just that family aspect alone, have somebody else with common beliefs to talk to, especially when you're secluded in a liberal area and it seems like you're the only one in this crazy bubble. But it is a bubble, and that made me join Today's America. As to strategy of growing that, influencers are coming to us all the time. They see what we're doing. We have a very good reputation in the whole conservative industry in terms of this family aspect and caring for our influencers. And right now, one of our main goals is actually trying to be the first conservative organization who pays our influencers to put conservative content out there, because with liberal content, it's a little different. It's like you get a social advantage as to doing that. But when you put out conservative content, you only have a lot to lose. You can lose your job, you can lose your family, you can lose your friends, and it's looked down upon.
Well, so also let me say this too, and
go ahead.
And tell me if this sounds right. I think also, if you're putting out conservative content when you're small, it's probably not going to be noticed by the mainstream. But as soon as like Project Veritas, once you get big enough and loud enough, and you put out something that's like, whoa. And even if it's totally legit, just like we saw with the CNN guy, undercover video, and what he was saying, they just will cancel you, or they'll throttle you in a big way. So I think that's the other kind of against the grain thing you're talking about. It's not just that you might be canceled. It's like you're running on a treadmill that's working against you a little bit too. Is that correct?
Yeah, in every aspect of your life as well. It's like, right, like the big corporations, your job, it's many of these things, and people, who want to sustain themselves, who also, I mean, this is not for my age group specifically, but for many other folks who have a family and want to go ahead with these things and perhaps work for a more liberal leaning organization. It's like, yeah, no, you know what, HR finds out, they're getting fired, and it's not a good atmosphere. But for the young folks, it's the job example of that is college. They're not going to get into college, or they might get in trouble with their administration there if they post this content. I mean, high school administration actually as well, but maybe that's just in California what we've seen. But again, there's just so many obstacles from all types of institutions around young people that are, I guess, negatively impacting their ability to put out conservative viewpoints. And Today's America was born to fight back against that.
Is there a way,
in terms of expansion? Yeah.
You mentioned high school student, a college student that may not get into a college. They may get, like the girl, come under attack from their own high school. I'm sure that there was even staff involvement in that, if I had to guess, these days, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
So is there a way to kind of, I guess, for lack of a better way, to Goya Beans that shit? Where do you remember Goya Beans, where he didn't bow down or go silent? What he did was he promoted the whole thing. And he said he kind of doubled down on his stance, and then people from all over, you talked about a family atmosphere, from all over the country started buying Goya Beans. And then he had like 400 times his greatest profit the next month, and named AOC Employee of the Month, right? So I'm using that as an example, but is that what Today's America, the family aspect, kind of does? Is you'll rally around those people that, or maybe being...
Oh yeah, we're not backing down. We're not backing down. That's not the way to do it. That's not how we win a cultural war. We're in it to fight. And you know what? If we're adapting the standards that the left is putting forward for us, we've already lost. We're going to fight. We're going to create our own standards, and we're not going to let our creators go down.
You think the left has become accustomed to, and maybe this is a real weak point for them, they're used to conservatives being kind of nice guys that just bow down. They don't want to create any waves. So if they push on the conservative person, usually they just, tuck tail and run or go silent. And that's been a good tactic for a long time. But now there's more of it, kind of like Charlie Kirk says, we're going on the offense now.
Exactly. We're going on the offense, and Donald Trump introduced that. I think that concept, and I think it really riled people up in a very good way. And I think that people are far more influenced by what Donald Trump did and what the cultural revolution that he brought. He broke so many people's brains, I think would be a good way to say it, right? But at the same time, it's like it's a good cultural revolution. We're going on the offense, and I think partially he started that, not partially, in a big aspect actually.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so you mentioned a big number earlier. You said 40 million people within your reach. Now, what
Right.
does that mean exactly? That, I mean, because I know there's not 40 million people who are following you guys, or there may be, but what does that 40 million number mean? Because that's exciting.
Right. So we have all these creators who are part of the TIA network, and we and overall their follower reach both on Instagram, on TikTok, and on many other platforms such as YouTube, and we're actually venturing more into Facebook, but primarily on TikTok and Instagram is 40 million followers altogether, and that's an audience of specifically Gen Zers and young millennials. And I'll just want to ask, by 2022, this audience, Gen Z and young millennials, are actually going to be the largest voting bloc by 2022. So the work that our organization is doing right now is going to be absolutely essential in the next election, not even to say 2024, which we're going to have even a bigger impact on.
Now, you said within, I think the acronym was TIA network, something like that.
Yes, our network of influencers. Yes, that's the basis. That's our family. That's the reason TIA exists, right?
Got it. You know, when I was at the Turning Point event and hear about the kind of structures they're creating, you're not in competition with them. Obviously, we're on the same team. You were attending one of their events, but you know, is there a problem with, you know, you got this conservative movement for students over here, you got this one over here, this one over here. Is it the more the merrier, or do we need to consolidate and work together?
Well, I'd say the more the merrier, but also we have a little bit of a different approach than Turning Point, right? Turning Point sets up campus chapters, which we've also done. We have about 12 in the United States. Turning Point has far more than us. They set up these campus chapters. They work with students who are already conservative and interested in politics, I would say. What we do is we try to get the crowd, which, I mean, doesn't necessarily even care about politics. They just, you know, like I said before, they want to go out to the bar every Friday with a bunch of their friends and watch sports on the TV, right? But you laugh, but it's generally the you know, it's the majority of them.
Because I know you and your brothers were going out to the bar after that.
Right. So, but that's the majority of Americans, and that's the majority of the voters. So while the left has been targeting them so successfully through Hollywood, through sports, so many different things, it's like we need someone to do that. Cam actually introduced me to this phrase, and I don't know if he's gonna like me saying this, but we're like the bar stool of politics. You know, we go after the social group, not only the people who are interested in politics. And I think, you know, generally speaking, Turning Point's a great resource for the people who are interested, but everybody else, it's like you're not gonna get people interested in politics through giving them educational packets. And today's America packages conservatism in a very sleek way and allows to get that specific social group, which doesn't necessarily always care. You know, I hope that explains it pretty well. And
no, it's huge.
I guess that's also a difference in approach, right? So, and different focus on groups. So yeah, the more the merrier. They get those students, we get these people. And I think altogether, we're going to have a pretty strong conservative movement and a great turnout in the next election cycle.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You know, it sounds to me like you are a feeder for people to become, you know, that you wake up people. That's what you guys do, is wake them up and get them to see reality as it is, common sense. Then they become conservative in their political views. And then somebody like Turning Point can actually take them and, you know, maybe groom them to be part of a student body government in their college.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know, and I'd like to shout out another certain conservative organization. They're called Run Gen Z. What they do is they work with, Run Gen Z. They run Gen Z leaders for office in their community. So they work with specifically that age group. And I think, you know, in combination with today's America, Turning Point and Run Gen Z, one provides the education, the other wakes people up, and the third one runs those people for office. I think that's a beautiful combination. And I think, you know, being able to work with all these organizations, I mean, the conservative movement, I mean, we're going to run the table very, very soon.
Yeah. You guys are, I hope you're right, man. It sounds like in baseball speak, I was a baseball player, you know, through professional. You're the college recruiters trying to go out and find the high school talent. Then, then you've got your minor league. That's the farm team. That's Turning Point. We're going to now develop your conservative understanding. Then you got the big leagues, and that sounds like Run Gen Z. We're going to help you guys, you know, go run for something. That's pretty cool. Yeah.
And the beautiful part is that during our stage of this whole process, it's like if we wake people up and they don't even need to be interested in politics, they don't even need to go to the other stage. At least they will vote with us in the next election cycle. Okay, and that's what that's what the left has been very good at doing. They've been very good at sort of the black square reposting, the Hollywood. Again, people don't necessarily even understand what they're voting for, but they know that they're not voting Republican because my favorite actor said so. So there's no deeper meaning to that. But if the conservatives and we can package our fundamental ideas in sort of a sleek way, which will wake people up and at least get them to vote for us, we're already winning on the election level, so to speak.
Yeah, and a lot of my generation and older, they will talk down about the influencer generation. They kind of just blow it off as, oh, that's all silly. They never would have heard of TikTok even now. But there's this idea that to be an influencer and do what you're doing, packaging it in a really cool, sleek, bite-sized kind of way for people to kind of wake up little by little. It's sort of seen as a silly, childish thing. But the truth is, you got to be very smart. You got to have a great creative mind to put together, even if it's just meme creating. There's really funny memes that stick with you all day long, and then there's ones that they're a dime a dozen that aren't.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely, yeah, and yeah, comedic content is actually one of the ways we promote conservatism, because to understand the premise of a joke, you might as well understand it. So
yes.
Right. So again, comedic content for people who are not even looking to view conservative content or anything like that. That's how we get that crowd interested. So yeah, very much so.
Well, one thing I've got to say, just on a personal level, talking to you, you seem like a very energetic, happy dude, and I love to see that. And that's great. But I see a lot of people, even if they're your age, on the left. I'm not talking about the people that don't know what they're supporting and they really just want to keep their head down and go to the bars. I'm talking about the people who are activists on the left, your age all the way up to 80 years old. Very angry. Even if they get their way on everything, it's like very angry and outraged at all times. What do you see as the biggest difference there? Why is that? Because they're winning.
Right. No, I think that, as much as I hate saying this, but I guess resentment-driven movements happen to have a very infectious aspect about them. So when you say, it's really the aspect of blaming somebody else or something else, or again, this saying systemic racism, blaming the system for everything that's going wrong in our country. And probably they're so angry because their comparison to what we should have in the United States is to a utopian standard, I like to say. It's like they're not. Yeah, it's in their head, and they compare it to again, like a heavenly utopian standard as to what should be happening in our country in terms of policing, in terms of all these other things, in terms of even racial relations. But you look at any other country in the whole wide world, you don't come to the I guess the race relations, the level of racism the low level of racism we've been able to achieve in the United States. You look at any other civilization, any other country, the United States is best on all metrics involved. So again, it's this utopian standard, and it's this resentment towards the system compared to that, which is driving all these movements. So that's probably my best answer as to try to estimate their logic behind the hate that's just being thrown out there.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. The resistance driven, or what'd you call it? Resentment driven movements,
exactly.
Definitely have a contagious aspect to them. And to give one of the things you said a little context, we in America, when it comes to race, we've got a very different set of issues that we have to deal with because we have been a melting pot. We do have so many different races represented here. Whereas if you look at Norway or you look at Uganda, for instance, like it's what's the word for when it's basically one nationality all the way, monolithic or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So those countries, they don't even have to really deal with it at the level we do. But I do agree with you, especially like in the 90s and early 2000s. It almost seemed as though we were attaining that level that Martin Luther King was after. But then,
I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, it's almost like the left.
I'd say that's accurate.
Yeah, it's almost like the left couldn't allow that to happen because then they were going to lose a massive voting bloc.
I think so, and it's identity politics, and you see it in California. It's like people are coming from Mexico over here become Americans, to become American, to live their American dream. So when they're being trapped in these bubbles and identity politics, but specifically by the left, because again, they're just a voting bloc, they're just a voting group, they're just another building block to get into power in the next election cycle, right? They're not being allowed to become Americans. You know, they come in here from Mexico, for example, right? I guess that's a big influx of immigrant demographic in California specifically, right? And they're sending money back to their villages there, to their families there. So what is it so great about this country? Our country's a miracle. So they want to become Americans, and they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to fully adapt the American culture because, again, they're supposed to be Hispanics. They're supposed to be this. They're supposed to be that. And they're supposed to vote for Democrats because they're being represented as Hispanics. Well, it's like, no, people should be represented as Americans because this is a country of Americans, excuse me.
Yeah, you got it, man. It goes back to that old word picture of, you know, we were a melting pot, but now it seems that we're trying to be made into a salad bowl where, yes, we're all mixed up.
I don't like that. Yeah.
Everybody's their own thing. Whereas the melting pot, there was kind of an agreed upon set of, you know, constitutional ideas and free market ideas that if you want to be here, you need to adapt to this as best you can to be successful. So yeah, it's sad to see that being changed, but I'm so glad that guys like you, Charlie Kirk, you know, I'm trying to do what I can to wake people up to say, hey, you don't really want to lose what you've had. It hasn't been nearly as bad as what you're being told, you know, from the TV.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. And Charlie, you know, Charlie's a big influence of mine personally. You know, I look at him and I look at what he did with Turning Point USA during that leap year that he had between high school and college. And I'm, you know, I definitely get a lot of enthusiasm from that. And the fact that, you know, they were the new kids on the block. He was able to get funding. He was able to grow this great organization and turn so many people into educated conservatives. It's like if he was able to do that, then with the power of social media and so many different technological tools that we have now that he didn't have, I don't know, what is it, 8-10 years ago, I hope we're able to do even more. Yeah, man, that's fantastic. Well, tell me just real quick before we sign off here, you know, yourself, Tim, you know, do you see TIA, Today is America, is this your full-time gig going forward, or I probably can't even talk about that, but is this the deal, or do you plan on going to college and getting a degree in something and moving in another direction? You know, what's the long-term plan for you? Look, I'm a sophomore in high school right now. We'll see what happens. But as of now, I don't see college as essential for me to do what I want to do, which is promote conservatism, promote the truth, and just the fundamentals of a thing such as free speech. You know, I'm very verbose. I talk a lot, and you know, I lean a lot to the conservative side, and that's the thing that I hold very dear to my heart that I cannot see, you know, ever being demolished for any political ideology and for any reason. So for me to fight for that, I really don't need a college education. And as of now, I don't see myself going to college. But we'll see what happens. And I think in terms of Today's America, I definitely see this as a full-time gig, me taking probably even a bigger role in this organization quite soon. And yeah, I mean, I hope to grow this movement because we've been able to do something special over the course of the last 11 months. And we're really excited to continue that journey. You know, I'm really glad. I just don't think you're a guy that I'm going to see throwing a Molotov cocktail in Portland at a police car or anything. I don't see that in your future, man. So. Well, no, I really hope not. And you know, by not going to college, at least I'm decreasing that chance of indoctrination. So okay. There you go. One more thing we got to touch on because you said that. So I you know, now know a lot of people whose kids are just now about to leave for college. And Charlie Kirk didn't go to college. You're saying God be with them. God be with them. That's what I say, you know? Yeah. But we need those, you know, student government leaders as well at the big colleges because hey, if none of them are there, then it's going to be 100% leftism basically. Yeah. But tell me about, you know, the path to success, for those who just, they're fed up with the institutions of college and the leftist thinking involved. But at the same time, they're worried about, well, if I don't go, I won't get that, you know, that degree on the wall, you know, what would you have to say to them? I mean, I'd say, first of all, there's a lot of jobs, even in large technology companies. Tesla is the greatest example of this, which don't look at a college degree. They look at experience, and they look at maybe even any sort of certification that you can get online. I guess computer science is one of the most hot majors right now that people are going to college for. There's a certification for that online for a fraction of the price that's going to get you a top position in a company like Tesla. So I would say that. That's awesome. Right? right. Elon Musk himself, he went out there and he said, I when I interview people, I don't look at the college certification. I ask people specific questions to see if they're actually experienced and capable of doing the job. And even at today's America, we had people who came from universities who studied and weren't able to do certain jobs. So it's not a good show of ability, and specifically from a managerial standpoint, a person who is hiring, they want to get the job done. They want their company to function effectively and efficiently. So I don't think that, especially in the next 5 to 7 years, I don't think we're going to have a problem of a college degree being very necessary for you to acquire a certain position. Of course, if you're not a doctor or a lawyer, because, I'm sorry, but you have to go to college for that. Can't learn that off the internet. But yeah.
So Tim, before we let you go, are there any plugs you want to give? Any last words you want to say to your peer group and mine in terms of the path forward with your organization?
I'll say this: Gen Z and young millennials, we're about to run the table. We're about to bring back conservatism, and today's America is going to be at the forefront of that. So keep our name in mind. We're going to do something really great very soon. And if you'll be kind enough to follow us on all social medias, we greatly appreciate that. So thank you. Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Yeah, man, no problem. And the biggies are Instagram and TikTok, right?
Instagram and TikTok. Yep, we're taking over.
All right, my man. Thank you so much, Tim. Love talking to you.
Thank you. Love talking to you as well.
All right, buddy.